One thing I'd even want to add is that remote detonator, when you're pushing an undead model, that can be a corpse candle. So it's blowing up, handing out damage and injured, drawing a card, and you're getting a pyre marker that's dropped under whoever you just blew up on. So it's really a bad day for them.
Howdy friends, Craig here. Time for another Malifaux deep dive. This time it's the Resurrectionist Master, Reva. We cover how the first M3E errata improved Reva and made her competitive. Spoiler alert, a fast, high damage dealing master is a good thing. Our guests go over some of the key tech picks that they bring in and which models they leave off the table. Keep in mind this was recorded before the most recent errata, so their comments on lamp pads is different since the change. So make sure you look at the change to lamp pads in the most recent errata. Stick around to the end. They offer some very interesting thoughts about the new explorers. All right, sit back, relax. It's time to talk about Reva. Enjoy.
Third Floor Wars delivers interviews, insights, and discussions about everything hitting the tabletop. In a world where life hits you from all sides, you deserve time to relax, disconnect, and unplug. Rulebooks, plastic models, dice, and cards in hand. Let the gaming begin. Tabletop games let you escape and unleash grand battles and regale epic tales of adventure with your friends. If you love gaming and learning from players, designers, experts, and creators, you are in the right place. Pull up a chair. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk Podcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor for yet another episode of Tabletop Talk. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the Resurrectionist Master, Reva, and how the Revenant crew works in Malifaux 3rd Edition. My guests today are Bryan Bauer and Ewan Bailey-Thiele. Both have been on the show before. Bryan comes out of the very competitive and aggressive Texas meta. You've heard him on one of our Path to Podium episodes. So Bryan, how are you? Welcome back to the Third Floor.
I'm glad to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so we got a couple things to quickly discuss. Talk to me about the World Cup.
So the World Cup's been a lot of fun. It's pretty much just players from all over the globe are competing in events to see who's the best and gets invited to a global Masters. It's really fun playing against players from all over the world. I have a game in a couple hours against someone from the Poland meta, so that's going to be exciting.
Now, did you play in 2E, Bryan?
Yes, I did.
So in 2E, Poland was an infamous meta. Very aggressive, played a lot different than most of Europe. So I'll be very interested whether that has carried through, whether you have the same players, that from 2E into 3E. So you'll have to report back. How about some non-Malifaux gaming? You do anything other than Malifaux?
Yeah, I recently picked Fallout 76 back up.
Nice.
With their new expansion. Thought I'd give it a go, and it's been a lot of fun lately. So I've been playing that, and then I picked up Ocarina of Time again. Which,
what's that?
The Nintendo 64 Zelda game. Going old school, like way back when. I found my old box, and I said, you know what, let me hook this up and play through it again, relive my childhood, and it's been a lot of fun.
Ewan plays out of Australia, and it was also featured on a Path to Podium episode. In fact, we talked about Reva on that episode. So Ewan, welcome back to the Third Floor.
Thank you for having me.
So, my friend, we know you've been playing some Malifaux because as I'm getting reports from your area, you guys have the pandemic in a much better situation than we do here in the U.S., which is a low bar. But what other than Malifaux, what have you been up to gaming-wise?
A lot of Crisis Protocol. We've actually got a get-together day for that tomorrow. Loving that. And I've recently picked up Infinity with N4.
Wow. So let's talk about MCP first. What are you liking about it?
I love the flexibility. I love the interactions. The models are brilliant. I've just converted my Storm to have a Mohawk because it was a criminal that she didn't have that alt head available. I'm just loving the thematic nature of the abilities, the simple rule set that makes it really easy to just sit down and pick up a game. Lots of fun.
Yeah, you can tell that those guys over at Atomic Mass looked at Malifaux because you can see some Malifaux in the rule set. The way I pitch it to a lot of people is it's kind of Malifaux light. So it's not nearly as deep as Malifaux, but it's deeper than it first appears. It's an impressive rule set.
Absolutely, I'm loving it.
Yeah, and the thing I love the most about it, and it's part of what I love about Malifaux, is like when you play Malifaux and you get into it, not only do you have like the mechanical competitive aspect of it, but it's also got its own like feel, right? It feels like monsters and demons and cowboys and stuff like that. With MCP, like it feels superheroes, like Hulk feels like Hulk, and
nothing quite like throwing a truck at someone, you know?
Exactly, picking up a bus with Hulk and throwing it into Storm's face. Now, Infinity is a game that I tried years ago and hated, but I'm hearing that the new rule set is pretty good.
Very streamlined compared to what I've heard of 3rd edition. I'm missing alternating activations from Malifaux and Crisis Protocol. I used to play a lot of 40k and War Machine, so the my turn, your turn thing isn't quite my speed. But there seems to be a very high bar to entry, but once you're over that, it's going to be very easy to understand nowadays.
I don't think I realized that Infinity does not have alternate activations in the new rule set, and that baffles me. The way
it works is every time you move one of your models, every one of their models that can see that model get to do something.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
it's not
I walk forward, your guys can get out the way or shoot me, and then it's all contested.
Got it.
So it's more like a firefight.
Okay, that's better. All right, so it's not as bad as I thought it was. Okay.
Not 40K.
That's good. Bryan, have you had any interest in any other mini games, or are you all Malifaux all the time?
So I really want to pick up Marvel Crisis Protocol once COVID's over, or at least when we can get out of our houses. But I mean, other than that, I played. Oh my god, I can't remember the name of the game. God Tier. I've played a couple of games of God Tier, and that's a fantastic board game / miniatures game. It's just so simple yet complex at the same time.
It is. It's a good game. It's what Shadespire was supposed to be, and it wasn't.
I picked up Shadespire because I was like, oh, this looks like a fun game, and then I played and said, no, this is a deck building game.
Yeah, it's a card game.
Yeah, I like deck building games, but not with models.
Yep. Yeah. So. It was sold to me by people that weren't familiar, that hadn't played Magic, right? So they were super excited about it, and it's because it was their first exposure to that type of gaming. And once I got into it, I'm like, well, shit, this is like Magic with really expensive tokens. And so I appreciate people that love it. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad game, but to your point, Bryan, it's not a minis game. And if I want to play a card game, I'll play a card game. And quite frankly, I won't play Shadespire. I'll just get on Magic Arena and play Magic because it's a better game.
Exactly.
No, I'm with you. So guys, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on Reva and the Revenant crew. We're going to dig deep into how both of these gentlemen build the crew, how the crew plays, some key tech pieces that they bring in based off of the strategy, scheme pool, and the opponent. And we're going to even talk about at the end how to counter this crew. So, Bryan, let's start off with you. Let's pretend someone listening has never played Reva, or maybe the last time they did was in 2nd edition, and she's a lot different now. What is your elevator pitch? How would you describe her style?
All right, so Reva is a face beater that sets things on fire. She's super quick, so she's move 7. She runs all across the board, setting things on fire, ripping fire off her friendly models, and just beating people's faces with it. She's a monster on the table. It's amazing.
Yeah, she's definitely a beater. But do you consider the keyword a beater keyword, or is there some other style aspects to the crew itself?
It's a very the keyword itself is very aggressive, which obviously fits my play style.
Yep.
The keyword's hypermobile. It's quick. It does a lot of damage output, and it supports itself in order to be a monster on table and probably tries to table its opponent very quickly.
So I'd be curious, Ewan, do you consider Bryan's assessment pretty accurate, or do you have anything to add or counter?
Pretty accurate. The crew, and especially Reva herself, can put out an incredible amount of damage. If I needed to sum up Reva in one word, it would actually be consistency. I find that her crew is, you're not going to put them down. You're not going to stop them hurting you. You're not going to stop them getting where they need to go. Reva's just a crew that you're not going to be able to stop. If you want to go against her, you're going to have to play around her, not through her.
So unlike a lot of other aggressive masters and keywords, it sounds like you don't think she's a glass cannon.
Not particularly overall with the crew itself. She's got some vulnerabilities, but I find her crew to be quite tough.
Yes.
That's
she's definitely she's definitely, she can be a glass cannon, but her crew has so many abilities that prevent it from being a glass cannon. It's amazing.
So, Ewan, for you, can we talk through some of those offensive capabilities? So when we say she is, as a master, as a model, is very offensive, what makes her that way?
Well, straight up, she's got min 3, 4, 5 damage track is always good to see on a beating model. But the big thing with her is just the amount of the board she can threaten at once. Just this one model has this incredible threat range. Effectively, including the charge itself, she's got close to a 17-inch threat. One charge, she can make 3 attacks 17 inches away from where she started. And that's including 8 inches past her to a corpse marker, and then the corpse marker, and then 2 inches from that corpse marker. By the time it's turned 3 to 4, there's not a model on the opponent's side that you can't remove if you need to. And it's just this omnipresent pressure and threat that Reva puts out. And a lot of her crew can do similar tricks with the speed that Bryan talked about, that you never know what you're going to lose next.
What's crazy about that is, usually when people talk about aggression and they talk about damage output and threat, they immediately go to the attack, right, and look at the damage track. And what you have to look at first with her is that move 7, which is unbelievable. I mean, it's really good. And, then the ability to arc. So, Bryan, can we talk about that mechanic a little bit? What she does with corpse markers?
Yeah, so she has, on her Ethereal Reaping ability, while she's unengaged, she can draw range and line of sight from friendly models with either shielded or corpse markers within 8 inches. And it's a 2-inch melee. So essentially, it's a 10-inch range if it hits the max. Actually, 11 if you count the base of the corpse marker, right? But because it's a melee, she can charge, which then she can take the melee action through something 8 inches away. So a lot of our crew also pulses out shielded. So, you can give your model shielded, and then she can charge and attack through it, which allows you to apply a surprise threat to your opponent. Because, your opponent will think they're safe, and then a model will get shielded right next to it and goes, oh God, I'm in trouble. And then she also has a thing that helps out a lot. And this is into her keyword a little, or one of her key abilities a little bit, is as part of her turn, she pops out a corpse candle within 6 inches, targeting a corpse or a pyre marker, and just throws a corpse marker down, which essentially just adds extra corpses to the table and just gives her a 9-inch melee.
Yep.
Right off the bat, with no discarding a card, no resource spending of any kind. It's just boop, here's a 9-inch threat range, and you're now engaged.
And obviously we're going to get into how to play against her, but one of the things people listening need to remember, because it's something that seems obvious, but you don't catch the first time, is she can charge and get 3 AP attacks. So, and when, typically with all other models, you say, I'm going to charge and I need to be engaged after that, right? I need to have my engagement range in place to effectively use that free attack from the charge. But because of her arcing ability, it's a totally different thing. I can charge, not be engaged, and actually get 3 AP of attacks out of her. So Ewan, let's talk about her defensive capabilities. What keeps her on the table?
Well, she's got a couple of good things. Channeled Flame sort of works both ways. This is an ability that was added to her card in the Arada. It allows her to spend the burning from any friendly model within 8 inches to get a positive flip to a jewel, which includes all defensive jewels. Any simple jewels that she has to take, it's a way to get positives to those, which Focus can't actually do. On top of that, she's healing every time she kills, and with everything we've already talked about, she is going to be killing. And then Rezzers have some other tricks that they can do if they need to as well, plus healing on the back of a card. So She'll take some damage when the opponent gets on her, but she will earn that HP back on her turn.
And I think that ability is multi-layered, like you talked about, Ewan. So you not only have the ability to get the positives, you also have a mechanism to pull burning off of models that you don't want to be sitting there with burning come the end of the turn. And it also helps with hand pressure, right? Because that's what positive flips do, is it relieves some of the hand pressure from that, especially considering she can do it, to help with target numbers and everything like that. Bryan, I think that was a big addition post errata for her, don't you?
Yes, that was huge, and that took her from being an okay master to being probably one of my favorite masters in Rezzers. I think I saw the math a while back during the Nicodem era where positive flips, don't quote me on the exact math, but I think a normal flip, your average is a 7. If you have a positive flip, your average flip is a 9.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's only defense 5, which is not great, but because of that positive flip, she's essentially defense 7 because of that +2, right? And it really helps with your deck management and your hand management. It's so nice to be able to flip 2 cards on for every duel and try to go for that high card to protect her. And I think that throws a lot of people off.
Yeah, it does. And, that +2 to the stat is mathematically correct, right? It doesn't play that way necessarily on the table. But the big thing that positives do when you can use them for defensive duels, for positive duels, is it relieves your hand pressure. And it puts pressure on the opponent. It increases the chances that your opponent is going to have to cheat first. And any mechanism in Malifaux where you are cheating second more often than your opponent is a huge advantage. Huge advantage. How about you in supporting? So does she in any way support the rest of her crew? Or is it just she gets rid of obstacles by killing models?
Well, you've already talked about removing burning from the crew. So the whole crew wants to be in pyre markers a lot of the time. Some of them use the burning themselves, but they also all get shielded through the keyword ability Spirits in the Flames. Once per turn, they can treat a pyre marker as hazards shielded. But
it's once per activation, by the way.
Activation.
So if someone else moves it on their turn,
yes, that was a misspeak. Thank you for catching that.
No worries.
I've been playing too much Crisis, where turns are activations.
Yes, I hate that term. And
it's the opposite way. I've been playing Crisis for the last week and a half, and I'm like, turns are activations. Turns are activations.
That's funny.
So the ability to manage that burning from the models who don't necessarily want it, like your shield bearers don't want burning. Your Vincent doesn't want burning. A lot of your models don't need that, and being able to pull that off with Channeled Flame is huge. But she's also got Embrace the Flame, which is got swift action of the trigger. An example of this is I was playing Rebecca from the Path to the Podium I was on, who plays Karis. And in one of Reva's activations, I removed close to 18 burning from my own crew that Karis had spent 2 turns putting out. And I was like, all gone with 1 activation. Let's move on. That ability to manage your own burning while healing your crew, while getting positives is insanely good. And she can also actually hand out a decent amount of injured in the right setup, which a lot of people I've seen don't really touch on. The Inquired Dead is an incredibly good ability once you've got a couple of pyre markers in the middle of the opponent's crew.
So I'd be curious, Ewan, when you, it's turn 1, can we walk people through what a typical 3 AP spend is for her? So what does a first activation turn 1 look like for Reva?
I normally activate her quite late. I've normally got a corpse marker over the halfway line already. It'll either be alive as a zombie or it will be an actual corpse after the opponent has killed it. And a lot of the time, she will already have a focus from a Blasphemous Ritual. And then she will activate a second focus, charge, pull 2 burning, and make 2 attacks with focus. So she'll be on double positive to hit, single positive to damage, and whatever the opponent sent forward is either gone or really in a bad way.
Now, for movement, are you pretty much, is it rare for you to actually walk with her? Are you mostly just charging and attacking with her?
Oh, mostly, yes. And what's incredibly useful for her is late game, you can charge towards an objective, but then attack a different direction. You don't even have to go directly at who you're fighting. You can use that charge as a strategic walk and still get an attack out of it, which is incredibly AP efficient.
Exactly. How about for you, Bryan? What do you do? Like, does she turn 1? Is she activating late, just like with Ewan?
Yeah, that's exactly what turn 1 is usually swing at something with either 1 focus or 2 focus, depending on my card hand size or my card hand strength. So just charge, beat the thing in the face that you can, and it should die. And then your up activation is going to round 2, which helps so much. Something I want to touch on a little bit more that Ewan mentioned was the Unquiet Dead, because this ability can make or break your game. It's insane. So essentially, you target a pyre marker. Any models within 2 inches must pass a willpower 14 duel or take 2 damage to gain injured 1. You only need a 4 to get it off. And the kicker of this is its mass trigger is do it again, targeting a different pyre marker. So I can do it 6 times in an activation. And if you have 3, you typically want 3 models that you're hitting with each pyre marker. So you can force 18 willpower 14 duels or take 2 damage, gain injured 1 every time. And that will bleed your opponent's hand immediately.
Yep, exactly.
And it's, I've had people that just, they're devastated after that. Because if that's your first activation, is if you can put out that amount of damage, the rest of your crew just follows through and they're tabled. It's honestly one of the surprise abilities, and it's not something you're going to use all the time because it's not always set up, but anytime you see the opportunity and you can go for it, it's so good, man. And one of the things you can do is a fun little trick. I don't know if you want me to talk about this here, or if you want to talk about it later. So, she pops out her corpse marker at the beginning of the turn. She's likely going to be hurt. She's going to be damaged, whatever. She'll feed on grief on her own corpse marker, which will kill it because it does 2 damage. She'll heal 2. She'll heal another 1 because a model died within 6 inches. She can heal again for 1 if she has siphon life. So she heals 4, right? Because she killed it, it drops 2 pyre markers, and now you have 2 pyre markers in the middle of their crew in perfect position where you can just light them up with the Unquiet Dead. And because of that placement, you can just surprise opponents that they weren't ready for something like that to happen on turn 1 activation. And it's not great that, you waste an AP doing the setup, but you're healing for 3 or 4, which I will definitely take that trade-off. And
yeah. So that gets into what we've been talking about, which is her ability to stay on the table. And what is starting to become apparent for me as a listener is you have a lot of flexibility. You and I'd be curious, is Bryan overselling the Unquiet Dead, or is he spot on?
Oh, absolutely not. It is when people see when I put Reva on the board, I see my opponents look at our card and they go, all right, I'm going to get rid of these corpse markers. I'm going to stay away from these corpse markers. She's not Karis, so people don't care about your pyres. You're not going to do too much fancy stuff with them, they think. And Reva loves forcing a controlled battle. If you can pick an area where you're going to fight, I'll get into this later when we talk about schemes, but if you can force that fight, Reva is going to just chew through your opponent, and that ability is so good for it. What Bryan didn't touch on is you can also use it a little defensively with its other trigger, the Crow trigger, will actually pulse out shielded and a point of healing to every friendly model within 2. So in that brawl, if you're already in a good offensive position, you can just heal your own models too.
Yeah, that's nice. And I think that that control aspect is something that isn't immediately apparent. So that's fantastic. So guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, we're going to start building a crew around her. So we've seen that she is damage output. We see she's got some board control. One thing to keep in mind with these pyre markers is now that we know what a danger these pyre markers are, you're now dictating placement of your opponent. Either your opponent's going to put themselves into jeopardy or they're going to start losing some board control in order to avoid it. But how does the rest of the crew build? Let's take a break and we'll find out. We'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. You deserve a new playmat. Here on the 3rd floor, we use Mats by Mars. They are scratch resistant, waterproof, wet erase marker compatible, almost free of glare and lighter than neoprene. Mats by Mars gives you over 40 designs to choose from. You pick a mat, pick a design, and then you pick an overlay, like one for Marvel Crisis Protocol, Star Wars Legion, or even Malifaux 3rd Edition. Those overlays will really speed up your deployment and make the placement of objective markers so easy. Use our promotion code in the show notes to get a 10% discount on your first order. In the notes of your order, you can even request the 3rd Floor logo on your mat for free. That makes the best mat in the business even a little better. So get some new mats, save yourself some money, and help support the show. Go to matsbymars.com. All the details are in the show notes, including the discount code. So obviously when we talk about the core crew, the first thing is Reva, and what comes for free is the corpse candles. And we talked a little bit about the corpse candles, but Ewan, I think there's still some things to understand. So let's talk mechanically how the corpse markers get on the board, how they act on the board, and what they do for her.
So straight up, your corpse candle is a kind of almost a battery for Reva. You're going to be cycling through them very quickly. Getting pyres, like Bryan talked about, you can use them as a mobile corpse marker. There's two little tricks that I quite enjoy with them. The first is their bonus action. Light the Way, it's got no flips, it's automatic, and it allows you to move all corpse markers, push within 3 of the corpse candle, up to 3 inches. This includes your other corpse candle, because you can have 2, any mindless zombies you have on the board, and it's that little bit of positioning to your opponent will play just out of your reach. They'll ask you your threat range, you'll tell it to them, and then suddenly you're 3 inches closer. Yeah. And that change in math can be incredibly useful, especially in that early game where you're not quite stuck in yet. Late game, everyone knows you're in a fight. Late game, you're going to take attacks. Early game, people play around that, and that sudden 3-inch push can get you in range when you weren't before. The second one is when a corpse candle dies, it drops a pyre marker. When a model from Reva's crew kills, they drop a pyre marker. So Reva, once you have lost 1 corpse candle, which I'll normally lose turn 1, I'll target one of them with Blasphemous Ritual, get a pyre marker for some burning and shielded, get some focus, 1 corpse candle left. Reva activates, turns that 1 corpse candle into another corpse candle and 2 pyre markers. You discard nothing, you spend no resources, you just gain 2 pyre markers and 30 millimeters of movement on your corpse candle, which is a nice way to sort of get some more resources out early if you need them.
Well, and it allows you to establish more of the control, right?
Yes, and especially late game, you can use that just dropping 2 pyre markers, and it is a drop, so you can put them directly under enemy models. Dropping 2 pyre markers late game out of 1 model with no cards or resource expenditure on your part is a lot of fun when people realize you can do that consistently.
Yeah, definitely. So now we've established that we've got Reva, we've got the corpse candles. What is the first model you add in the M3E app when you're building your Revenant crew?
2 Draugr straight away.
Wow. All right. So let's talk about the Draugrs. What do the Draugrs do for you?
Well, they've got a lot of the standard tech for Reva. They're getting shielded of pyre markers. They're dropping pyre markers when they kill. They're tough. They've got hard to wound and Blaze of Glory. So same as we were talking about with Reva, that ability to just always have a positive flip is hugely beneficial. Decent, like they've got a 2/4/5, but with the amount of focus that a Reva crew can hand out with Blasphemous Ritual, you're going to be landing that 4 a lot without having to expend many cards on your part. Especially when they have the puncture trigger, which is just an amazing trigger, gets you to those straight flips easily. And then what I love about them, this is actually one of my favorite abilities that I didn't start using properly until I'd played a lot of games with Reva, was Draw Off Flame. 8-inch range, target any model with burning, place base to base, and take their burning. If you've got fire on your enemy, get right in the face. But if you've got fire on your own model, that's a free 8-inch range disengage for your Draugr. You just leave the fight and attack someone else. Your opponent can't tie these beaters up. You can't just stick them with a tank, leave them somewhere you don't care. They're going to leave. They're going to go wherever they want to go. This is the consistency I was talking about. Reva's going to do what she wants. You're not going to stop her.
So I'd be curious, Ewan, with the two Draugrs, are you finding that they tend to occupy the same part of the board that Reva is threatening, or do you spread them out to increase the threat range of the crew itself?
It depends on the scheme pool and the strat in question. A lot of the time, I'll spread them out a little bit. I like to send the Draugr up a little earlier than Reva and present that sort of mid-range threat for early turn 2. A lot of the time, they'll be paired with a Corpse Candle. When Reva summons her new Corpse Candle, that candle comes in with 1 burning. And that 1 burning is enough to teleport your Draugr.
Right.
And it just creates more of those unexpected threat angles that Bryan's talked about. They'll just come out of nowhere. You're never quite sure where they're going to be. And they will put the hurt where it needs to be.
Now, Bryan, are Draugrs in every one of your core crews?
So Draugrs weren't for a long time. I've been experimenting with them recently. I am liking the Draugrs. I don't know about running 2, but they're definitely everything that Ewan was saying, where they can just teleport around. They're fun little threat ranges. I mean, it's just like, surprise, here's a Draugr with 3 burning that's going to use 2+ flips and hit you in the face. And same thing like Reva, where he only defense 5, but he has plus flips on all his duels. So on his defensive duels, he's plus flipping, and it's gonna be really hard to actually take him down.
Yeah.
And then, so let's say that he is threatened. He does have the Juggernaut ability, so you can pitch a card and heal 1, 2, 4, which is just an extra way of keeping him up and alive. I do want to mention one thing about the totems, though, because the totems, I think, are such a huge part of the keyword, obviously. Even though they're defense 2, willpower 2, 2 wound models, they seem like nothing. So whenever you summon one, right, it comes in with 1 burning. But if you place it inside of a pyre marker, it gains an additional burning because it's placing within hazardous terrain, right? So they come in with 2 burning. And then a trick you can do is with their bonus, even if there's no corpse markers around, you pop it, give them a 3rd burning for free. Oh. And then Reva can use the burning on those corpse candles for all of her attacks and her defensive flips, because she's pulling off other models. So the totems are so big into how this group plays with this mobility, moving opponents around, moving your course markers around, getting into position where you can actually thread the board. So yeah. But overall, yes, Draugrs are 100% amazing. I am fully sold after playing them recently.
So what is your first hire then, Bryan? If it's not Draugrs, and Draugrs are relatively new and shiny for you, what has been your first hire?
The Shield Bearers are my bread and butter. I used to hire 2. I've now swapped 1 out for the Draugr, just in my play testing. The Shield Bearers are extremely tanky. So they have the same thing with the Final Veil, where they heal when models die. They have armor 1. They have hard to kill. They gain shield when they're in pyre markers, and they have take the hit. So obviously, they can pitch a card, defend Reva, defend the Draugr, defend your key models, and become the focus of the attack when they have shielded, armor, and hard to kill. The other thing is on their melee, this has a built-in heal. Target suffers 2, 3, 5, and this model heals 1. So they're extremely difficult to remove from the game, while being able to output some good damage. They also have, like Ewan was saying, the Blasphemous Ritual. So you typically want 1, so that way you can remove your course marker and pulse out focus to your crew, which ends up giving you that early game damage that is very surprising to some people. And then also Shield Slam. Shield Slam is a surprisingly powerful ability. Essentially, the target suffers 1 damage. It's a melee action, and you push them up to 2 inches in any direction. It does have a trigger of knock aside, so you can push them an additional 4 inches. And so, if someone's on an objective for ley lines, or if they're trying to hold position, you can just charge them, hit them with the Shield Slam, get them off the objective, get them out of the area, and you can control the board, or push them into your pyre markers or your corpse candles and start trying to corral your opponents into the position that you want them to be in. Or you can use it on your own models, right? You have so much shield in your crew that your shield bearer can charge, shield slam your model, knock off its shielded, and push it 4 inches or 6 inches away in any direction that it chooses. So if the Draugr or Reva is in a threatened position, he just says, nope, charges in, shield slams him away, gets him out of there, and engages the target, which now can't really get away because it's really hard to get rid of these models.
Yeah, the little in any direction is a big piece, right? To give you that flexibility to relocate a model. So Ewan, how about you? Are you using the shield bearers?
I'm often taking one. I might take more depending on the objective. One thing I want to add to the shield slam, two things actually. The first, which I've noticed a lot of people don't tend to do, but is really next level for Reva, is that 6-inch push is actually a 2-inch and a 4-inch push.
Yes.
So you can bend it. You can go 2 inches and then 4 inches a different direction. So that slight change is huge for getting deeper or getting out of line of sight. Makes them, whatever they're targeting, it's incredibly hard to stop them getting away or getting into the right position. Your opponent can't really block up their crew as effectively. I do have a small problem with them, which is why I don't take too many. They are competing for a low mask in your hand. You need a low mask to get that knock aside. You need a low mask to do swift action on Embrace the Flame on Reva. You need a low mask to do Perdition's Flame on Reva. A big problem for her, which I'll talk about when we get to her issues, is card management. That got better after the Erader because she used to have to discard a card to summon a Corpse Candle at the start of her turn. Doesn't anymore. But that alone, if I tried running 2 shield bearers and I found that I never had enough masks to guarantee what I wanted, or I'd be having to spend 9 of masks, 10 of masks on just a push.
Right. And it's one of those things, too, that people don't think about a lot of times when they're building crews, which is suit pressure. And when you look at after you've built your 50 stones, and you have to look at the crew and figure out where is the suit pressure going to be? What are the suits that different models needed? And sometimes if that pressure is too high, you might have to pull a model out and just say, you know what? When I theory foe this model, it's going to be able to do great things. But in reality, I'm using my masks elsewhere, and I'm just not going to be able to get the utility out of this model that I need to because of that suit pressure. So I think that's great. So Ewan, after you've looked at Draugr, after you've looked at shield bearers, what is another common core crew model for you?
I would be going to a versatile, which is the Carrion Emissary. That is in every one of my Reva crews. It's a bit of a common pick, but honestly, turn 1, the Carrion Emissary could put a zombie or a corpse marker. I believe it's just under 21 inches out from where it started. And that's the one you're going to use to kill something turn 1. And on top of that, AoE Injured handout is always amazing. I think Injured is one of the strongest conditions out there, which stacks with the Unquiet Dead for another source of Injured. It's just a strong model and helps with scheming. It helps with your corpse production, and again, using coffin markers for board control and zone control, which is what Reva loves to do. It fits really well in all of my crews, and I haven't left home without it.
You hear me talk about saturation a lot, and the ability to do any level of injured saturation can be devastating. And what it does, and again, this is becoming a bit of a theme here as we're talking about this keyword, is the hand pressure you put on somebody by handing out injured is incredible. It devalues every card in their hand by having that injured itself. Now, Bryan, from my understanding, though, you're not a big fan of the Emissary.
No, not at all.
What keeps you from using it? Because it sounded pretty good when Ewan talked about it.
Yeah, it looks great on paper, but anytime I put it on the table, it just doesn't seem to perform. Like, okay, you do get the far placement of the zombie that you can use, but with positioning, you can just get corpse candles to do pretty much the same thing. It has no real defensive tech other than hard to kill and terrifying, which if my opponent wants that thing dead, it's going to die turn 2. Mm-hmm. Even with hard to kill, they're just say, okay, I'm going to save these cards in my hand. I'm going to hit the Emissary. It's dead. It's gone. Or if you don't want to get shot, you just have to engage it. The big limiter on it for me is it has a 0-inch reach.
Yeah.
So a model with the 1-inch reach just charges in and says, okay, you have to waste 1 AP walking in base with me. And now you walk in, you have one AP to hit me back, right? A 0-inch engage model is is awful in Reva's crew. It just doesn't flow.
Well, and the other piece of this, and people don't think about this sometimes, is a zero engagement is rough. It's really rough when the model has a big base, because it's so hard sometimes, even with flight, to be able to get that carrion emissary where he needs to be to do an attack. Because when you've got a 50 mil versus a 30 mil, it's a lot different getting into base contact with something. So Bryan, if you're not hiring the carrion, what's next after your shield bearers and you're looking now at the draugrs?
It's either going to be Vincent or it's going to be Anna Lovelace are my two. It's a coin flip, right? So if my opponent is a summoner, I'll bring her in keyword henchman because he has the exorcism trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So on a crow with his on a crow with his gun, he just removes a model from the game. So that big Jiroguma on the other side, just hit it with the crow, it just pops, it's gone, no big deal. Try to throw the whisper on him, so that way he gets card draw when he does that too.
Nice.
Which is just fantastic. If my opponent's not a summoner or not a reser, because his gun does ignore hard to wound, Anna's the one that fits into that slot. Anna, for one, is just probably the best model in resers.
Mm-hmm.
She has so much versatility, but what she brings to a Reva crew is her bonus can push a corpse marker. She can push a undead model, like a corpse marker or a zombie, 3 inches, and then it explodes, which then hands out injured, forces a simple duel, which puts additional hand pressure on your opponents, and she draws a card off that action. Also, your opponent cannot target their friendly models within 6 inches of her, which they can't use the assist action to remove your burning off of them.
Oh, right.
So she has a lot of fun play. And then another big reason is she brings card draw to a crew that has 0 inherent card draw. I'll get into that later because that's huge with Reva.
Well, what's very interesting to me about everything you just said is you didn't even bring up Gravity Well.
Well, because Gravity Well is great inherently, but what it brings to Reva crew isn't anything, right?
Well, no, I agree. My point is not only is she great with everything you just said, but she's also bringing Gravity Well, right? Yes. So like if you weren't already sold after your pitch, then I go, oh yeah, she has Gravity Well too. It's like, holy crap, that's worth bringing her in. Ewan, how about you? Are you ever bringing in Lovelace?
Oh, absolutely. One thing I'd even want to add is that remote detonator. When you're pushing an undead model, that can be a corpse candle. So it's blowing up, handing out damage and injured, drawing a card, and you're getting a pyre marker that's dropped under whoever you just blew up on. So it's really a bad day for them. She's an incredible model all round. I do not disagree at all that she's one of the best models in Revs. And she fits in really nicely to a Reva crew, especially due to just how resource deprived you can be.
Now, how about Vincent? Are you bringing in Vincent as corner case like Bryan is, or never, or always?
Corner case. I've run him to great success into summoners or people who run a lot of Incorp. He was my star piece in the Dreamer top table and the Path to the Podium that we had.
Yep.
He's always felt almost a little conflicted to me, which stops me hiring him a lot. So he's got this 10-inch range sanctified crossbow. It's a great weapon. He's got rapid fire, so he can use it a lot in a turn. Good triggers on it. So he kind of wants to be doing that. You want to be sitting him almost as a turret, handing out as many of those attacks as you can in a turn, though it is discarding a card in a crew with bad card management, so that is a major cost to consider there. But he's also got agile, so he can get out of engagement to keep using his gun, but he's also, you'd want him a bit further forward to slip in and do schemes as you need to. And that always makes me feel like I'm not quite sure what I want him to do. Late game, I go, I need this man to scheme, but he's 10 inches back, nowhere near where he needs to be for me. So corner case, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. It brings up, I think, something that for people listening to think about, not just about Vincent, but in general. It's one thing to have a master that is very flexible, right? That's versatile. Like, say, for example, the Transmortis. Well, I can't think of his name. Von Stuck. One of his strengths is his versatility, right? He's a jack of all trades. He does lots of different things. It's a little bit more complicated when you're talking about a non-master model, because really when you're hiring, you want to bring in a model to do a very specific job. And if it does a couple things okay, sometimes it's not a real job for that model to do. So I think that's a good call out. So Ewan, before we wrap up on core crew, what are some other key models that you always bring in?
It really depends on the composition. If I'm not bringing a shield bearer, I normally will bring a gravedigger for that blasphemous ritual. I also love their front of card ability, Field of Corpses. It can catch a lot of opponents by surprise, especially in Reva, because Reva is producing a lot of corpse markers on the board, but unlike a lot of other Reva Masters, she's not getting rid of them. She's not consuming them for much. That's not also putting out a new corpse marker in the form of a corpse candle. The fun part there is that Field of Corpses can actually count your corpse candles as scheme markers at the end of the game. So even if they're not dead, you can have two models over by a building, and you just go, yeah, that's a scheme marker now. I hope you have fun with it. So Gravediggers, I look at a lot.
Gravedigger. Now, how about Lampads?
Oof.
Yeah. No.
So let's make the case for why everybody needs to put their Lampads into the case collecting dust. Why are they not making it into your crew, Ewan?
They are 8 points for a defense 4 model with no damage reduction, and its only defensive tech requires you to discard a card in a crew that, as we have said many, many times now, has bad resource management.
Yeah.
And even then, you also need a pyre marker to get rid of.
Which you don't want to do, right?
No. I'll often bring one, and that is only if I need to go deep into the opponent's field, because they are the most independently fast model in her keyword, like other than Reva herself. Other than maybe a Draugr, but they all need something else, in my opinion. Like a Draugr needs another model with burning. The Lampad can just be deployed on the edge of the board and go straight up it and do breakthrough for you, if you have to do breakthrough. But I don't think that's their go-to scheme forever.
No, not at all.
If you have to, but in that case, you're probably playing a different Weather Master.
Mm.
Yeah, Lampads are just so bad. I mean, okay, so let's talk best case scenario, right?
Yeah.
Someone shoots your Lampad at defense 4, doesn't have hard to wound, so they pop it. You lose a resource out of your hand. It places within 6 inches on a pyre marker. It heals 3. They just shoot it again and make you pitch another card. Like there's no way to keep this Lampad up. It just falls apart so quickly, and it's got some cool things. Hovering Flame, it can Breath of Fire, but it falls apart so easily for 8 stones that there's better models in your crew. And if you really want a fast model, like the Wenyudo is my go-to for fast.
Yeah, interesting. Why is that?
Huge.
So he's also move 7, like Reva. He has Trample, so you can go through other models. When he goes through them, they have to pass a 12 movement duel or take 1 damage, gain burning 1. So more simple duels to put hand pressure on your opponents. They have mobile warriors, so they can charge while they're engaged. So if you try and engage them to stop them, they just charge out of it. They charge through you and force you to take a duel, and then they're on the other side of the board, right?
Right.
Their melee is a stat 6 against your move, which most move is 5. So they're +1 on their attack to whatever you're flipping. But on their attack, they get a free push up to 5 inches. So he can charge, he can hit you, and then keep going, right? So in 1 AP, he can move 12 inches. And then he's on your side of the table. He's scheming. He's doing all those fantastic things that you want to do with your quick models while your rest of your crew ties everything up. So I think if you really want fast, Wenyudo's the pick over Lampads.
They can't really compete with him well.
No.
And he's a point cheaper.
Out of curiosity, did either of you bring in any other versatile models?
I agree about the Gravedigger. I love the Gravedigger. There's a fun little thing if you have 2 shield bearers. If you have 2 shield bearers, a Gravedigger, and the Restless Spirit. Actually, I don't think the Restless Spirit's required, but you can get 3 focus on Reva before she activates, and then 3 focus on whatever henchman you bring. So I do like the Restless Spirit and the Gravedigger. As for other models, there really isn't anything else. I know a lot of talk is like the Grave Golem is a big talk of like, oh my god, it's so cool. but it's so slow.
Yeah.
And people just focus that thing down. And sure, it comes back, but I'd rather invest those points somewhere else in something that's going to do a lot more for give me a lot more bang for the buck. I know people have mentioned Archie, which is just a more expensive Grave Golem that's honestly worse for Reva.
Yep.
And then like there's Bone Piles, which they're okay, but they can't gain burning, so you can't pull the burning off to heal models. You can't use it for your positive flip. So realistically, they don't fit a Reva crew.
So Ewan, one of the things that I hear people are tempted and try is Azura as a versatile bring in for obvious reasons. Her interactions with mindless zombies, which are corpse cancels. So like on paper, right, she looks good. Is there a reason you're not bringing her in?
I actually tried to bring her in for a little while when I was starting Reva. I brought her a lot. The main thing I'd say is she is stone hungry.
Yeah.
Stone and card. If you're bringing her 8-point model, honestly though, you are taking the Whisper on her every time. Mm-hmm. So she's really a 10-point model because you want that intuition to be able to know which suit you have to stone for her summon. That's adding enough pressure already, and then you want to stone for her every time, so that's 5 stones gone.
Right.
And something I'd mention as well is Reva herself doesn't have a single inbuilt trigger. Oh. So if you're not cheating those triggers in, you're going to have to stone for them. And we talked already about Petition's Flame, Swift Action on her Embrace the Flame, Siphon Life on Feed and Grief. Really important triggers that just, you don't have a way to get them in every time unless you're bringing stones. And Asura will eat those stones off you. Even Exorcism on Vincent, if you're bringing him into a summoner, Asura is eating stones that your crew wants. And I just don't find a place for her anymore.
It gets into that theme we've been talking about hungry models, right? She's a hungry model. Lamp pads are a hungry model from a resource perspective. Bryan, are you making the same case? Yeah,
and let's be real. If you're spending a stone to get a mindless zombie on the table, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like that crow trigger on the zombie apocalypse should be built in. And then if you really want to do the come to me or swift action trigger, you should stone for that, spend a card for it. But the fact that you have to stone or spend a low card that obviously the crew's resource intensive for a mindless zombie, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And then also she is easy to kill. Like even with hard to kill, like she's only 8 wounds, defensive 5, no other real defensive tech. So she goes down just as quick as a lamp pad. You can stone for to reduce damage, but then you're using more stones on the model that shouldn't be eating your stones.
So in your typical builds, Bryan, how many stones do you bring with a Reva crew?
7 to 8 is my go-to. Because Reva is typically, she's in the thick of it. So you need those stones just in case something gets through her to keep her up. Because once an opponent realizes how awful she is on the table, they're going to send everything they have into her. And so I need those stones to keep her up, or using them for like Vincent's triggers, or using them for her triggers, which we'll get into second level play on that one. But like my Reva crews are super stone hungry to keep her up.
Yeah. How about you, Ewan? How many stones are you typically bringing?
The same, 7 to 8 every game.
Yeah, that's good.
I do that with almost any master though. I love my stone. 7 to 8.
If I bring 6, I feel bad.
Oh yeah, I panic.
We have really seen that change a lot, because if you go back and you listen to early deep dives and early discussions about M3E, there was really no talk of bringing more than 3-4 stones, which was really, even in 2E, that was considered high to bring 4 stones.
Unless you're a summoner.
Unless you're a summoner, right? And I got to give credit to the Virginia meta, the Eastern Virginia meta, because I think they were the first ones that were saying, and they had never played foe until 3 came out, and they're the ones going, why are you not bringing 8 stones? Why are you not bringing 10 stones? And there was discussions where everybody thought they were crazy, but I've noticed in the more conversations I'm having that people are bringing more and more stones. So that evolution is very interesting, and it's something that's great about Malifaux, because things change over time. It is not a closed system. It's such a complicated, deep game that there's a lot of different ways to do things, and the meta changes on a pretty regular basis. So, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, we're going to get a little bit more specific about how we score points. So we're going to talk about building to the pool. We'll be right back. There are so many online retailers. It can be hard to find one that is trustworthy, has great prices, along with some reliable customer service. On the third floor, we love ordering our gaming goodies from Gadzooks Gaming. Their selection of terrain, miniatures, dice, custom decor, and conversion bits are curated for gamers by gamers. You'll find they have what you need and what you didn't know you needed to take your gaming fun to the next level. If you mention Third Floor Wars in the cart notes of your order, you'll also get a free gift. And you'll help support the podcast. Check out gadzooksgaming.com and mention Third Floor Wars on checkout to get that free gift. The best thing that ever happened to Reva was the Gaining Grounds errata, right? She became a much more viable master and keyword. The worst thing that happens to her is that she's in the same faction as von Stuck, who is a phenomenal master and a phenomenal keyword. We talk about Lovelace. Lovelace is in keyword for him. So I'd be curious, Ewan, when you look at the strategies, when do you go, you know what? Reva is better than von Stuck or any other Reser Master. Where are you more likely to bring Reva in?
Well, it helps for me that I don't own von Stuck, so that's keeping him off my table for now. I really like Reva into Recover. She's good at killing, she's good at staying alive, and she's good at denying ground. So even when your markers drop, you can punish the opponent for going to get them.
Right.
And I quite like her in Symbols of Authority just because of that speed and flexibility we've talked out. Less so in ley lines because some of her mobility, especially for Draugrs, which I've mentioned I always take two of, relies on place mechanics. If you run more shield bearers, that's a lot more pushes. She's incredible in it. But my particular play style, the Draugrs lose out on that if they have the lodestone, so I tend to shy away from it a bit more.
So what's interesting is we've been talking about how aggressive and deadly she is, and you did not mention Public Enemies. So is there a reason is there somebody else you usually bring into Public Enemies? Do you just hate that strategy so you never want to play it?
Honestly, my meta just doesn't play it. We've had close to, I think, 9 events in this GG1 pack, and I don't think any of them have had Public Enemies in the pool. Yeah, it doesn't make our events because TOs just tend to prefer the less killy strategies.
Well, and I would argue it's the weakest of the four, or the least interesting of the four. And the ability to build shut down against it, I think in theory sounds great until both opponents are doing it, and it ends up just being a game about schemes, not a game about the strategy itself. So Bryan, when do you find yourself going, I'm bringing Reva?
It's Corrupted Ley Lines is my go-to with her, just because of that mobility. You can just run to the markers, you can score them, and not have to worry about anything. The biggest thing, though, is all the push triggers are in her crew. So Reva has a push trigger on her melee, and then the shield bearers have their 2-inch push. So your opponent runs in on one of the ley lines, you just boop them off of it. And they can't do anything to stop it. Yeah. So I can deny your schemes your strategy very easily with Reva, and she can also score it because she's so mobile, right? Like she can go from one marker and she can charge to the other one, score it, and take some swings at you at the same time and do a bunch of damage, right? Like, to me, that is just, it's flawless Reva.
It's scoring and efficient is what that is.
It's so great. And then obviously Recover Evidence is really, really good because of, like, let's say it models at 2 health, a shield bearer can charge, shield slam them, drop the marker, push them, and then pick it up, right?
Nice.
So there's a lot of little push tricks that help out with it. Public Enemies is great. My problem is that Reva's crew even though they're really tanky, if my opponent focuses on a model, it's going to die, right?
Mhm.
So if the jogger runs in there and scores and picks up 2 points, my opponent's just going to dump everything into the jogger and kill it, which will deny me the strategy. So like they don't stay up well enough for me to want to take her into public enemies. That's where Shtuk comes in.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's so
Bryan,
good.
out of curiosity for you, what are some schemes that if you see them in the pool and you've already decided you're going to bring Reva, that they're just auto picks? What schemes does she do? What schemes does she do well with?
The Hidden Martyr scheme is probably my favorite with her.
Interesting.
Because her models can be tanky. So if I run 2 shield bearers, I can put Grey Spirit Touch on them. So they are also terrifying in region 2 on top of all their other defensive abilities. You've heard me talk about that upgrade a lot because
it's a great upgrade.
Way too good.
So good.
Yeah.
So I mean, you put them in positions where they have to deal with them. They kill one, you score the first point, and then the other one can likely stay up to the end of the game. And they're only 6 points, so anything that they engage is going to be higher cost, and they'll just score the second point. So that one's really good. Research mission obviously stands out because of all the pyre markers.
Yep.
And so she can summon a corpse candle, kill it, it'll drop a pyre, it'll drop a corpse, and then someone can drop a scheme and score, right? So that one's very, very easy for her. I like Leave Your Mark in the pool because of the denial aspect. If you see the Leave Your Mark in the pool, there's a 90% chance your opponent is going to take it because it's so easy to score.
Mm-hmm.
But on her melee is a trigger which will turn scheme markers into corpse markers. So you just whack that thing in the middle and turn its scheme marker into a corpse, and then you get to score the point and your opponent gets nothing. So that's always a lot of fun.
How about for you, Ewan? Do you find that there's some schemes that you love, or is it just the same ones Bryan mentioned?
A lot of the same ones. With Recover, I'm obviously running the Carrion Emissary, so you're adding coffins to that mix of markers.
Oh, good call.
Even easier to score. Hidden Martyrs, great shield bearers. That's one of the schemes that I will always take shield bearers into. I quite like a Claim Jump, Leave Your Mark pair on Reva. As I mentioned, Reva likes forcing the fight to be where she wants it. And if I only need to be in the middle of the board, so say it's Recover Evidence, Claim Jump, Leave Your Mark, your opponent has to come to the battlefield that you set up. And you can make that a very bad place for them to be, which I quite like with her. Similarly, Let Them Bleed I also quite enjoy because of those asymmetrical threats, like Draugr can go get to that model that's not on damaged health somewhere. Burning is great for just making sure if you get one burning on every enemy model, you're going to score that second point easily. And just the damage. So I really like Let Them Bleed on Reva.
So you and I'd be curious, if someone's playing against Reva, so Reva is the declared opponent, and they look at their scheme pool, what schemes should they avoid? So is there any schemes that Reva and her crew do a hard counter to?
Bryan's already mentioned Leave Your Mark. It's just not going to work against her. And things like Take Prisoner and Catch and Release and the second point of Hidden Martyrs. Reva's got enough ways to move your models and move her own models that if I can predict that, or after you've revealed it, the second point is going to be really, really difficult for you to get.
Interesting. How about you, Bryan? Is there schemes you love your opponent to pick when you're playing Reva?
Surprisingly, Assassinate. I love it when they pick Assassinate. Because one, that means they're going to focus a lot of attention on Reva, which she's going to be able to defend a lot of that off. Which is also why I bring 8 stones, right? Is to keep her up because Assassinate's likely in the pool. So they're going to go in hard on her because she's defense 5. She doesn't look that great on paper. They can't really get her down. Or if they get her below, she just full heals with her bonus and damaging models. And it's like, okay, cool. Thanks for the point denial, you know?
Yep.
So Assassinate, I think, is really, really bad into her unless you can guarantee you can kill her. It happens, but it's not often. And then everything else that Ewan mentioned is also true. Like Take Prisoner, you're just going to get out of there. You're going to push away. And then even like breakthrough, where you're coming into my deployment zone, please come to my side of the board with Reva. Like, please come to me, and then we'll just face off and see what happens. You know,
That's very cool.
We've got a lot of fire over here, and would love you to come and stay.
The room is warm. Come on in, right?
Yeah, come join the cult. It's nice and warm in here.
That's phenomenal. So, guys, let's take another break. When we get back from this break, we're going to get to my favorite segment of my deep dives, which is second level play encounters. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Alexander Zdanchuk from Riga, Latvia, and I'm a patron of Third Floor Wars. Those guys open the beauty of Malifaux 3rd Edition to me and continue to provide tons of great content. You can support them too. Follow the links in the show notes below or search for Third Floor Wars at patreon.com.
What is it worth to you to get this podcast on a weekly basis? Is it worth $1 a month? $5 a month? $20 a month? If you'd like to help support the work that we're doing here on Third Floor Wars, please go by our Patreon. We're at patreon.com/Third Floor Wars. There you can pledge at any level, any dollar amount. Whatever you give us will help us put out quality content on a regular basis and hopefully make tabletop gaming a little bit better for you every week. Time to give a shout out to our newest patrons. A big special thanks goes to James Kahn, Rage Quit Wire, Deck Roll, Eloy, Robo Rotten, Jacob Suderman, Joshua Hatch, Donald Kroger, John Fox, and David Gadea. Because of you and the 100 plus that are supporting us on Patreon, we're able to put out regular content on a weekly basis. We appreciate it. Not that I'm not excited by every deep dive that I do, because I am. But this one in particular, I've been real excited about, and for a few reasons. One, I'm a Reser player. Two, I've been one of the voices out there that says Reva's garbage. Right now, I've been a little bit transparent in saying that I have not put her on the table since the errata, so I'm not a qualified voice to talk about her. But it was really exciting to me over the last 5 months to start hearing her discussed and start hearing top players like Bryan and Ewan go, "Yeah, she's good, Craig. She's good. You don't know what you're talking about." So I think at this point, even without second level play discussions, I am excited to get my alt Reva finally painted up and put her on the table, because a strong case is going to be made. But this is really where we're going to close things out. So Ewan, the first time you play Reva, sounds like there's a lot going on. So there's a learning curve, right? To be able to manage all of the activation orders is going to be important. Managing resources are going to be important. What do you consider something that you figure out about Reva after, say, 10 or 15 plays?
Movement tricks. We've mentioned them so many times on this podcast already. Shield bearers, pushing your models, pushing your opponents. The split push is huge. They're being able to do that 2-inch and then 4-inch movement. And then Draugr onto your own models. Corpse candles coming out of nowhere and providing a movement vector for a Draugr. Wanudo's personal speed. Reva being able to, as Bryan mentioned, I mentioned earlier, charge one direction but attack somewhere else, especially for objective running in symbols, ley lines, evidence. So you can charge to an evidence marker and then kill someone else and then pick it up. That ability to really look at the board and stop thinking in straight charge lines and simple movements it takes a bit of practice with Reva, but once you get there, it is beautiful to play.
How about for you, Bryan? What do you consider kind of the initially unfound or undiscovered aspects of her?
I mean, exactly what you just said. That's the biggest thing that you're going to take away after 15, 20 games is trying to get those movements just right and understanding that the board is not going to be static with Reva on the table. Another big thing that you're going to figure out as you play her is how critical her corpse candles are for like where you're placing them, where you're dropping your pyre markers, how they're moving your models around. So getting your corpse candle play is something that you're just going to have to learn how to play correctly. Because like I said earlier, their defense 2, willpower 2, 2 wound models, they're killed with a plastic bag, like it's nothing. But their placements, their movements, and then also all the burning, right? So when do I strip burning off this model? how am I going to manage my internal burning? Because obviously you don't want to go over 3 burning on any model, because shielded 1, except shield bears, but shielded 1 will knock off most of the burning on your models. But if you're on 4 or 5 burning, you're going to take a damage, and you want to try to mitigate that. So as Reva is stripping models, you have to figure out which models you want to actually take the burning off of in order to be the most efficient. So efficiency with her is key. And that's where you're going to find all your second level play, is trying to figure out how to make her the most efficient master possible. And once you hit that, she is scary on the other side of the table.
That's great
deployment. Good deployment as well is huge for her.
Oh,
especially with Master Ritual. When you set up that pulse properly on a couple of your models, you are getting 9 focus across your crew turn 1 if you play it right, and then the burning for positives. Getting that first turn set up sets you up for success on turn 2 and 3, and then your opponent just can't come back from that. So really sitting down, looking at your model choices, looking at where your free corpse markers and your corpse candles are going to get that focus out. When you're playing Reva at a high level, you want to have an understanding of how your deployment has to go, and that's really going to open up just the damage and the pressure she can put out.
Yeah, it's something I advocate all the time, Ewan, with everybody, which is when you're playing with a crew, and if you're in advance already know the pool, who you're going to play and everything, put the models on the table when you're by yourself on the kitchen, in the kitchen, and go through turn 1. And learn where some of the mistakes can be made in deployment, where some of the mistakes turn 1 can be made in activation order, where you can overextend, where you can find yourself not being aggressive enough. Those are all things you can do without an opponent on the other side of the table, and it can save you from making a lot of mistakes. So you and I'd be curious, if you're playing Reva, what are some things that your opponent can bring, or some things your opponent can do that's going to make your life harder?
There's a couple. So resource drain is a problem for her. She is going to be using every resource she has, and she needs them. And she needs a lot of different ones. She needs stones, cards, burning, pyres, and corpses. All of those are fulfilling a different function for her. And if you find a way to remove one of them, it's going to be a real big problem. Offensive condition removal and mass marker removal can be really big. There is one place where those 2 things come out in abundance, and that would be Pandora. I hate playing against Pandora with Reva. I've done it once and never want to do it again. To be fair, that's just for playing against Pandora in general, but still.
Yeah.
Anything that can really mess with that efficiency that you have to set up to get to next level Reva play, you break that down, and it can be very difficult for her to get the engine started again.
How about for you, Bryan?
Yeah, so I agree with all that. If you can offensively remove her conditions or even use her burning against her, that helps a ton. Marker removal plays a big role. So like I will not run Reva into Bayou anymore because they just bring the Lucky Emissary and they just run over all my markers and remove everything, right? So anything that can mass remove course markers or pyro markers or anything like that is just going to be a really, really, really bad day for her. And her cards are so important. Like she has 4 models in her keyword that discard cards to do effects, right? Take the hit, the Juggernaut, the Lampad heal, and Vincent's rapid fire. So, I mean, she could be pitching 4 to 6 cards a turn, and she doesn't have those resources. No master really has those resources to just get rid of, and she has no inherent card draw. So if you can do things that can make her discard more cards, it's going to make her so much less efficient, and it's going to hurt her a ton. Because I mean, even that 1 or 2 in her hand, she's going to end up using at some point for something. So those are the big things. And then explorers I think she's going to be really afraid of explorers.
Aren't we all?
So,
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm not as worried about explorers. But Reva in particular, they have a lot of marker removal, and because of that, I don't think she sees a table if someone declares explorers.
Interesting. Well, that is a wonderful little segue. So we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, I'm going to take advantage of a few things. One, it's mid-December when we're recording this. So the Explorer book has just dropped recently. We had just recently released the Insider Insights with Matt and Kyle talking about Explorers. So it's a bit of a hot topic. And I've got 2 top-level players. So we're going to talk about Explorers. We'll be right back. Howdy friends, Greg here. Nothing makes Malifaux easier than having the right tools. Here at the 3rd floor, we love all the licensed Malifaux goodies from Custom Meeple. Not only are they helping support this podcast, they sell custom-made weird licensed tokens and terrain. They sell it all. Crew boxes, terrain, markers, tokens, and even a 3x3 full Malifaux board. Custom Meeple sells a complete M3E token set covering every marker and token you need to play. Custom Meeple are the source for the official accessories for Malifaux. Everything is designed by hand and authorized by Weird Games. Check them out at custommeeple.com, that's with 1 M, or follow the link in the show notes. Up your Malifaux game and be sure to tell them Craig from the 3rd floor sent you. If you use the promo code 3rd Floor Friend, all one word, THIRDFLOORFRIEND, you'll get a 5% discount and help support the podcast. It's valid on everything except retail products and playmats. All right, so the hot takes that we saw when Explorers was released is, these guys are going to break stuff. How did it get out of play testing? There's not a whole lot of interfaction balance. You've got some real strong stuff, some real weak stuff. I think everybody who listens know that I'm not a big fan of hot takes. I think that nobody knows what Explorers does. Even if you're a play tester, you still don't know what they do because you haven't played them enough. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Explorers settle a year from now. But that being said, Bryan, when you may have played against Explorers or have at least gone through the book, is there a particular keyword in Explorers that you go, boy, I am not looking forward to playing against this?
Yeah, it's probably going to be the Cadmus keyword. That keyword is terrifying. I'm sure that there's a way to beat it. I just need to sit down, grind a couple games against it. I've played a game against Cadmus, against Apex, and against Jedza, whatever Seeker, the Seeker keyword. And Cadmus is probably the worst of the 3 that I played against. Their ability
that you hate.
The Parasite ability is just awful. So essentially their models can give you a Parasite token, which then lets them count you as a friendly model for their abilities. And one of their abilities that every model has is they can pitch a damage to a friendly model within 4 inches. So you smack them for 2 damage and they push one of those damages right back on you. So you have to hit them hard. You have to hit them fast. But that's where I think that they're going to be terrifying. Other than that, I'm not too worried about Explorers as a whole. It seems like a faction of glass cannons. None of their masters have real defensive tech. Like there's not a single one that's like, oh, you have armor. Oh, you have this crazy cool healing, or there's nothing in their faction that goes, my master's gonna be hard to kill. So you literally just have to punch them hard, unless they have, which everyone's gonna run, the Emissary, which is defense 7, take the hit. So as a whole, I'm not too worried about them, but I think that everyone just needs to get 5 or 10 games against each master and each keyword and figure out, okay, here's how the interactions work, and here's how I need to play against it, and we're just not there yet.
No, we're not. I completely agree.
Not even close.
Are you going to get sucked in? Is there some money in your wallet that's going to be spent on Explorers?
Surprisingly, no. Wow. They look cool, but I don't like playing the new hotness because everyone's gonna be playing it, so I try to avoid it.
Yeah,
I'm probably gonna switch over to Guild is my current thought, which I know is surprising. Yeah, the exact opposite of hotness. But Guild is a glass cannon. They output a lot of damage, which I think is going to be really key in these early games against Explorers as people are figuring them out. So like for the World Cup, switch over to Guild and just do so much damage as people are trying to figure out their crews and just punch through it. So
yeah, and I'll tell you, people, when they talk Guild, they say, well, is it Guild or is it Dashel? And I make that joke too, right? Because Dashel's phenomenal. He's a good master. He's a standout in Guild. But I'll be very interested what people think when they start seeing Perdita some more, which I think will happen because of the deep dive. I think Lady Justice doesn't get talked about enough. I think Lady Justice and that keyword has play. And quite frankly, the silence around Nelly blows my mind.
Oh, it's insane. It's criminal.
Nelly is good. Yeah. And especially now she's a little niche, right? You need the right pool. But boy, in the right pool, Nelly is I don't understand the silence around her. I really don't.
I think the fear about Guild is there's no one or two masters that does everything well.
Yep.
And so in order to play Guild well, you have to know 4 or 5 different masters really, really well and say, okay, this pool is specifically for these 2 masters, and then you have to pick the right master. Dashel is obviously the most talked about one because he can fit into most pools.
Yep.
Whereas the other masters are all niche masters. So,
well, and it might be out by the time this is released, but as of right now, we just found out that we're going to get a second version of Sonya, which I am dying to see.
Oh, I cannot wait. Although I like the current Sonya. Surprisingly, her with the new Pale Rider is just broken, and she gets Spell Eaters now, which is a whole other addition to her faction or her keyword. But surprisingly, so actually I played against Andre running Apex with Sonya, and she got into a shooting match with Lord Cooper and took him off the board.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Now, if you were playing a good player, would the same thing have happened?
Ouch.
Oof. Andre's gonna be a little hurt at that one. Poor Andre.
My biggest problem with Andre is he's really good and he's a good dude. I need you to be one or the other. You can't be both. You have to be good and a jerk, or you have to be a nice guy and suck. But that's not true for Andre, unfortunately. How about
it's true for Nick Westbrook?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, just like Nick is nice. He's not good at the game, which is fantastic. Actually, get credit to Nick, man. He had quite a little bit of run against what was a recent event there. He was taking out the UK players left and right. He was a dangerous boy.
I think he won his game against Matt Lewin and won his game against Jamie Varney.
Yeah, if you can beat both of them, and I don't care if both Matt and Varney were blindfolded and had all the markers turned upside down. Beating those guys is a big deal. So
he's done a lot better. But I mean, he grinds so many games, and just when you're grinding, you're going to figure out how to play this game.
You're going to have a hard time finding a human being that's played more Malifaux in the last 5 months than Nick Westbrook.
This is true. Yeah,
my man gets his and him improving to the point where he's improved is a testament to something I preach, which is the only way to get better at Malifaux is to play. Anytime you hear somebody having a discussion about something that they haven't played or played against, then don't listen to them, because the game is not Magic the Gathering. I can talk about a deck without playing against it by looking at the cards. You cannot talk about Malifaux if you haven't played it or played against it. And I live and die by that.
Yep. 100% agree.
Ewan, how about you? Is there something in Explorers that's scaring the hell out of you?
There's a couple of things. On the topic we were just going on, I've been playing a lot of Guild lately myself. Top 3 masters that I've been playing have been Perdita, Lady J, and Nelly.
Nice.
I've actually been loving Nelly into Recover Evidence. She is crazy at that. I have this one fond memory of nuking a Hanged for 9 damage on one attack with her, just because all of my evidence markers were on the ground, but he had not picked up a single one.
Wow. That's incredible.
Oh, she's great. Lady J and Perdita too. Dashel's ridiculous, but he's Dashel. Anyone who gets the 3-focus 24-inch executioner unactivated turn 1 is a problem.
Now, it's going to be interesting. I know that Varney's been goofing around a little bit with Guild. There's you guys are not the only 2 people that are going, you know what, I'm gonna see what's there and see if the whiny Guild players have something to really whine about.
They don't.
But let's talk Explorers, Ewan. Now, I know from my understanding you went to an event and played Explorers with just Bass and McCabe. Is that right?
I did. In terms of things, so you mentioned this earlier, and I won't talk about it too much because I don't have my NDA in front of me, but I have been involved in the playtest for Explorers pretty much the whole way. Cadmus and EVS, I am I think are going to be really strong. Bryan's already talked a lot about Cadmus and their potential. And what we've talked about today in card and resource management, EVS's keyword ability is a good player with that is going to be able to make good use of their cards. And I think that's going to be something that the more Explorers get played, the more EVS is going to move to the forefront. But Bass, my boy Bass, he's just gotten better and better.
He's gotten some good tools.
He didn't need it. I've played 22-ish games with Bass, I think. I have drawn 2 and lost to none.
That's amazing.
Oh my God. That's impressive.
Well, it's impressive because he's being poo-pooed all the time.
Like, he's such an incredible master. And the Sandworm alone, and then the Rough Riders, they've added so much to him. The Sandworm is... I'm so excited, because a centerpiece model like the Sandworm is just going to be... Touch my heart. I'm going to love that thing. But it's really opened... It's covered a lot of weaknesses they had. And a good Bass player before could wipe you by turn 3. A good Bass player now, maybe late turn 2.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, those sandworms are pretty nuts. I mean, they're so nuts that it looks like they could almost come from Australia.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. He represent, man.
Oh, my God.
Jaws of the Beast alone. I just went out back and I've been practicing with those things, like real-life version, to immerse myself in his lore.
You have Dune in your backyard?
Oh, yeah, no, the snakes.
Oh, that's great. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time. It's like I said, I've been really looking forward to this. I've been really excited about having you both back on the show. And we're about to record again next week with a very exciting topic, which I don't know if it'll come out before or after this one based on how I pace out the releases. But real quick, Ewan, do you have any shout outs or plugs?
Definitely like to shout out my local community. We got a lot of people here. Rebecca and James from the last podcast. Joshua Loomis is currently running a wacky Malifaux League, where each round there's a different modifier. We've had a round where we weren't allowed to have soul stones. We've had a round where we had no strategy, but we had 7 schemes in the pool and had to pick 4 of them. Lots of weird modifiers have been great fun. We've got a local henchman, Matt, and just a bunch of great people here have been pushing event after event after event, which has really gotten us all on the gaming tables.
Yeah, Matt and I are good buddies. He's a great guy. I think he's great for the game. It's impossible not to have a Malifaux conversation with Matt and not get excited about the game. The guy just loves the game, and his enthusiasm is
He's recently been
infectious.
trying to do 30 games in 30 days, and I don't know whether he achieved it, but he's been trying.
He's stressed out about it. I get a ping from him almost every day with a kind of an update on his status. And some days he's feeling pretty good about it. And then other days he's like, it's not going to happen, Craig. It's just not going to happen. That's great. How about for you, Bryan? Any plugs or shout outs?
Just shout out to my local meta. You know, we play a lot of games. We talk a lot of crap, but they're all a bunch of good guys. And then obviously thank you for everything you do, Craig. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. All right. Well, for those of you that stuck around to the end, thanks for listening. Take care. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch so you don't miss the avalanche of content we create. Links are in the show notes. Be sure to check out our shop on thirdfloorwars.com for the latest in gaming apparel and gear. There you'll also find the latest information for the US Faux Tour. Find out where you rank in your conference or even in the entire United States. Get those models built, painted, and ready so we can see you at the next US Faux Tour Masters event. Please take a moment to write a review of this pod on your favorite platform. Rating and reviewing helps us find more listeners almost as cool as you are. Be sure to share this feed with all of your friends who love tabletop gaming. Thanks for listening. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast. All right. We heard mostly Bryan was the last voice. So Ewan, I'm going to start with you again on second level play. You good with that?
I just talked
No
to you.
worries.
Sorry.
No. Honestly, it's been good. I think you guys are doing just fine. And Bryan, I'm going to edit out half the bullshit you're spitting out anyway. So
True. That doesn't make any sense. That's trash.
yeah,
Get rid of it.
cut. My first 15-minute deep dive. All right. All right. How do I want to bring
He
this
just
back?
used the emissary. He's trash.
All right. I'll probably start with you, Ewan. Typically what we do here is let's find the strategy that she's the best at, which means she beats everybody else in Rezzers. And then maybe discuss a second one where you consider her. And then we'll bounce to Bryan. Does that sound good?
No worries.
That's so hard with Stuck. Stuck can do all these by himself.
And that's actually was going to be part of my opening is that, the worst thing that happens to Reva is that Von Stuck exists. So, where do we find Reva beating out Stuck as the true optimal master? So that's how I probably start things. All right, I'll bring us back. I can hear you typing, Bryan, and you're a fast motherfucker.
Yeah, you got to be in IT.
Exactly.
I had a manager that finger pecked, and I was like, I don't know how you do that and work this job. It makes no sense.
I don't know how you would either. Hey, are you still here? Look, the podcast is over. And you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers? Well, I mean, if you're here, you might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast too while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.